Terah.
Hello, Lilou. So nice to see you all beautiful on the screen.
It's so exciting to be with you because it's really, I've been speaking about Feng Shui for a while, but I never actually did an interview about it with an expert like you. You're part of the A House, so a big, huge publisher. You're actually a friend of Louise Hay, but you have published many bestsellers. So we're getting the top of the top of the top, and it's really great that you're taking the time to share with us your wisdom. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
And I have to say, I loved your latest book that I have here in my hands. That is The Three Sisters of the Tao that we'll be discussing. But first, I wanted to really get a really good understanding of what Feng Shui is. First of all, how do we say it? Is it Feng Shui,
Well,
Feng Shui?
typical pronunciation is Feng Shui in the US, but I like to say that no matter how you say it, it's right somewhere in China. So you really can't get it wrong.
Cool, cool. So how would you define it?
Well, I like to define Feng Shui as the study of how to arrange an environment to enhance the quality of your life. So it makes a correlation between our outer world and how our inner world is manifesting. So it's a beautiful study. It creates a real deep experience, a beautiful, profound, meaningful experience with our environment, which for many people, our environment started off with just being stuff. Maybe pretty stuff, maybe just utilitarian stuff. And Feng Shui helps us to transform our attitude and realize that we're in a sea of living things that are all interacting and all in very intimate relationship with us.
Cool. So do you actually start, when you go into somebody's house or do Feng Shui, do you start by actually seeing what their life looks like by just seeing their home? You would actually notice areas of their life that are not so much working. Is it a perfect reflection, our home, of our inner challenges? And
it is uncanny how that is true. That the outer environment is a beautiful reflection of inner environment. And where people are having challenges in their lives, a Feng Shui practitioner can walk in and find how that challenge is being held in place in the environment. So that's a fascinating thing, isn't it? If somebody's having financial difficulty, health difficulties, those kinds of things, it will 9 times out of 10 be blatantly held in place in the environment in some way.
So why is there in a home there's divisions? Each area or orientation of a home corresponds to a particular area of our life? Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, that is one of the very fascinating Feng Shui tools that you're describing. We call it the Bagua Map, and it is an actual gridding of physical space contained within the structure of a home and how that space is actually segmented to see where different treasures or different important aspects of life are being held in place within that structure. So we'll have an area that's correlated with vocation, career, personal expression, creativity, love, fame and reputation, knowledge and self-cultivation. So there's a beautiful 9-part grid that's I cover it in all of my books, actually. So because it's easy to apply and it's extraordinarily insightful.
Why were they chosen per that direction? Why is, for example, South the fame?
Well, there's directional and non-directional ways to apply the Bagua Map.
Okay.
So the way that I like to apply it is non-directionally, using the front door, the front entrance, as my entry into the map. This Bagua Map is based on the I Ching, which is another one of the Sisters of the Tao, as I describe in my latest book. And what we've taken is the 8 basic trigrams of the I Ching all relate to a particular treasure in life. When we create structure, we actually create, it's very much like the body. It's another living body. And we can actually map how the chi or energy is flowing through a structure, whether it's the human being's body or it's the body that you live in called your home.
Wow, that is
It's
absolutely
great.
fascinating, isn't it?
It's very fascinating and it's beautiful. I've been involved with it now for over 15 years. And what I love is that it really does produce results. It is a fascinating study of how outer environment reflects the yeses and nos, the pluses and minuses of an individual's life.
Mm-hmm. And can we do that ourselves? Can we do that ourselves? And can we see some changes, immediate changes? I mean, where do we start from?
Well, the books that I've written on Feng Shui are very self-help oriented. I don't believe that everyone requires a Feng Shui practitioner to receive benefit from the study and practice of Feng Shui. So the Western Guide to Feng Shui Room by Room is my most thorough book. I recommend people go to the library. They can get on my website and download a free Bagua Map. It's easy for someone to put their hands on it and then just start to play with it. Go into it as an experiment and say, okay, really what I want to do is I really want to enhance my health. Let me go and find the area of my home that's related to health and let me just upgrade it, enhance it, do something that's meaningful there, and then watch and see how that affects my life. Mm-hmm. That's how I started Feng Shui. I was very much I wasn't sure. I started to experiment and started to have amazing results, not only in my own life, but in the people's lives that I had an opportunity to work with.
So I guess it's on a conscious level, you're actually consciously deciding to make a change.
Yes. So you get into this harmonious correlation between what I am desiring from the inside out being reflected and held in place in a beautifully harmonious way from the outside in. And we get that beautiful flow of the inner chi and the outer chi moving like a dance together. So if somebody has lots and lots of goals and intentions and desires, and they live in a very, very chaotic environment, there's going to be a mismatch. It's like the environment isn't holding in place what their interior world is requesting to have happen. So we want to align those.
Tell us about the energy, the role of energy in our life, I guess. Because here we're talking of letting the energy really flow, isn't it?
Yes. And of course, in the whole Taoist philosophy, harmony is when we get the flow to be not too fast, not too slow, but just right. We balance our work world with our play world, with our rest world. We are constantly looking to see how we can achieve, maintain, sustain balance. And of course, it's always changing. Mm-hmm. So we can't just strike one way of being and have that be perfect for the rest, obviously, right? So it really is like a dance, and we are dancing with life, every moment that we are alive.
Mm-hmm. So in a home, you would recommend often changing also things around, because it's quite, I mean, when you find a particular place, I've noticed, and you see that this is right for it, then you kind of a little bit hesitant to remove it. Like, oh, it's working like that, but at the same time, you have to continue to be creative.
Well, that's true. And, we can see it in a very sort of universal capacity here where we see people making seasonal changes. So they may bring in the spring flowers at that season. They may bring in the holiday decorations at another season. And so the house is always reflecting current circumstances, current celebration. So, of course, I like to tease that all of my furniture is on wheels because I like to move things around. But it's not, of course, necessary to be moving whole rooms of furniture around. And there are these pivotal, wonderful times, like a child has grown up, the child has left the house, the room that child grew up in may now be available as an art studio, a home office, some other way of utilizing that space. So we're always paying attention to life's changes and how they reflect in the house or the office building, the interior environment.
That's big, isn't it? Because in China, they literally build according to those, they set up a building according to that angle, isn't it?
Yes, they do. And they're setting up to receive the perfect amount of chi flow because, there's an acknowledgement we see this in culture where it looks like no matter how much energy is flowing, it's always good to get more. But the Chinese, and you see this in Chinese medicine, oh, wait a minute, that's not necessarily true. A rushing river can be dangerous. So we want that river to be flowing, not dangerously fast, but not sluggishly slow. This beautiful in-between, safe, comfortable, lovely flow. And as we were just saying, that is always changing. So it is a dance. It's not a stance. It's a dance.
I love it, love it. So there is 5 elements in Feng Shui, isn't it? Could you tell us more about those elements and what are their role?
Well, the Bagua Map, as we were talking about before, comes from the I Ching philosophy. And the 5 elements comes from the Chinese medicine aspect of Taoism. So we have fire, earth, metal, water, and wood. And those are the 5 in Chinese medicine that then the Feng Shui takes and applies it to environment. So if we're looking at the human body, we are a beautiful composite of all 5 elements. We're all of those, always swimming and changing and creating ideal, optimal health and well-being in the ideal world. We bring those elements out into our environment, and a Feng Shui practitioner is very, very good at helping people recognize how the elements are expressing themselves in their environment. And maybe there's an environment that has no wood in it at all, or very, very little fire, or way too much metal. And so that's defined and balanced. Very much like what a Chinese medicine practitioner would do, where they said, oh my goodness, your pulses are saying to me you have so much metal energy flowing through your body. Let's balance that out with the other elements.
Which is, what does metal balance with?
Well, metal, if we wanted to balance it, we would bring in the element of fire, because fire melts metal and gives it a little bit less of a steely edge. Right? One of the places where we see metal manifest a lot in our built environment is in offices, where there's white walls, metal furniture, metal detailing of all kinds. And so we'll find that when we go into a lot of office environments, they feel cold, sort of fixated, not a flow. So we want to start to bring in fire and all the elements. I mean, it always comes to the fact that it's all of them that we want balanced, even if in the steps in between we first start with fire in that regard. We are always looking to bring an inclusion, the inclusion of all 5.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's just the beautiful balance of all 5 coming in to create the ideal office space or home space.
Cool. But a person, like for example me, that is very fire, I think, then I wouldn't balance it with metal objects, for example, would I? I mean, how does the element, the main dominant element of the person impacts also, or what are the changes then, the physical changes that she can or he can make in his own environment?
Well, these are great questions. And so just so that you know, they're answered in great detail in the Western Guide to Feng Shui room by room. So if you are fire, for instance, what we would bring to you first, Lilou, would be water. We would bring the element of water, the soothing, flowing, warm, like a hot bath, or a bubble bath, a swim in a beautiful river, an experience in a jacuzzi or a pool. We might bring into your environment some dark tones that have a fluidity to them. And what that does is it just eases your fire down, not putting it out. That's not obviously the goal, because your fire's amazing and wonderful, but we would want to make sure you don't over-ignite and burn yourself out. Yeah. So again, it's the balance.
Interesting. Very, very cool. So adding fountains or things like that, little water
Absolutely.
elements. And there's particular areas where we should add those elements, isn't there?
The way that I like best to work with that is to make sure that all living areas have a balance of all 5 elements. Okay. And say for you, you may have a little bit more water than somebody else who's all metal, So we would tailor it for all 5, and then we would do great detailing for you as an individual.